Who follows the news? Does anyone follow the news? Okay. Pretty much everyone, right? Who feels he or she has been completely brainwashed and has developed an utterly twisted image of human nature in the past 200,000 years? Okay, we've got one person who's actually knows what's going on. You know, I'm asking this question because the news is a pretty bad source of information, right? It's always about exceptions, about corruption, about crises, about terrorism, about violence, etc., etc. So if you hear about all these exceptions all day, at the end of the day, you'll know exactly how the world doesn't work, right? You've got a completely upside down idea of what's actually going on. The biggest lesson, ladies and gentlemen, of the past 200,000 years is that in the past, everything used to be worse. You know? That's basically it. 6 years of study, and then you have it. For about 99% of human history, about 99% of humanity was sick, poor, hungry, stupid, dirty, and ugly. You know, that's the natural state of humanity. And it started to change only a very short while ago. Obviously with the Industrial Revolution, but especially in the past 100 or even 50 years, life standards have become much, much higher around the globe. Now this is obviously something you don't get from the news. According to economists and historians' best estimates, about 200 years ago, 84% of the world population was living in extreme poverty. Nowadays, that's under 10%. What is the real problem of our time? I believe especially in a rich country like Norway, where so many things are so well cared for and are so efficient. What is the biggest problem of our times in our generation? Well, it's not that we don't have it good. The big problem is that we don't know where to go next. We don't have a big utopian vision for the future. We don't have like another big milestone that we want to achieve. Now remember, every milestone of civilization, the end of slavery, democracy, equal rights for men and women, the welfare state, these were all utopian fantasies once, right? It always starts in the head of someone who is first dismissed as crazy or ridiculous or unrealistic, impossible. And then these ideas start moving from the fringes towards the center. And suddenly they can become reality. Utopia can become reality. And then we just think, oh, well, that's just normal. We take it for granted. We see it as common sense. But the question I became fascinated in is, what's the next big thing? And I'm not talking about, the next iPhone or whatever. That's nice, but is it really radical progress? I'm talking about some next big step like democracy, or like the welfare state, or like equal rights for men and women. We've got mountains of evidence that especially during times of crisis, most people are really nice, They help each other. That is what is very fundamental to human nature. We are a very social, very cooperative species. But so often we base our institutions and our politics on the idea that most people are selfish. And these become self-fulfilling prophecies, because what you assume in other people is what you get out of them. I think we can move beyond that. Raise your hand if you have never before heard of the idea of universal basic income. If that's a completely new idea to you. Is there anyone in the audience that has never heard about it? No one? Now this is really fascinating actually, because just 5 years ago, when I first wrote about it, it was a completely forgotten idea. It was one of those ideas that was on the lunatic fringe, that was not being taken seriously at all. And in a very short time, that idea managed to move towards the center. Basic income is obviously a very simple idea. It's the idea of completely eradicating poverty by giving everyone a monthly grant that is enough to pay for your basic needs. So food, shelter, clothing, that's it. It's really a platform to stand on. In the end, it's mostly about freedom. So it's the freedom to say no to a job that you no longer want to do. And it's the freedom to say yes to things that you do want to do. Move to a different city, move to a different job, start a new company. In that sense, you could call it venture capital for the people. I know this sounds pretty crazy, but actually up until the 1970s, almost all the economists, almost all the sociologists, philosophers, they all believed that we would be working less and less and less, and that the great challenge of the future was going to be boredom. What are we going to do when the robots have taken all our jobs? That was the big question that people asked themselves. And the question for us now is, what has gone wrong? You know, on the surface, basic income is a very simple idea, just a more efficient way of eradicating poverty, you know, getting rid of a lot of government bureaucracy, and that's great. I mean, I give all those arguments in my book, Utopia for Realists. But a deeper and more important reason is that basic income forces us to rethink what life is actually about. Eradicating poverty in this way, investing in each other in this way, is actually an investment that pays for itself in the long run. It helps societies to create more meaning and more real wealth, not just financial wealth, but real wealth that really, really contributes something.
Where's the resistance coming from? Why don't we just do it?
I believe that the real obstacle towards a basic income is not about technology or about economics, it's about ideology. So we've got this old-fashioned Calvinist ideology about you have to work for your money. We've got very outdated definitions of what work is. What is your image of human nature? What do you think people are really like? Do we need to be forced into jobs? Do we need to be forced by the government or by poverty or by hunger or whatever? Or is there something called intrinsic motivation? Are we meaning-seeking creatures? Storytelling creatures, you know, do we want to contribute anyway? Is that what the majority of humanity is like? Well, I think the latter is true, and I also think there's a huge amount of evidence from psychology, from economics, from history, etc., that that is actually true. And if we assume that in other people, if we say, I think you've got great ideas, I think you've got great ambitions, then that is what you elicit out of them, right? So these can become self-fulfilling prophecies.